This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Tired of wasting time and money on starvation diets that lead to more frustration and stress? If there was a weight loss solution that could actually work for you, would you try it? Then head to Golo.com.
I'm Steve. I lost 138 pounds in 9 months on Golo.
I'm Amber. I've lost 128 pounds with Golo.
If you're ready to take back control of your life, head to Golo.com now and see how Golo can work for you. That's Golo.com.
My sleep is way better. My inflammation has gone way down. Golo saved my life. I was way overweight. That's what sent me down the path. I wanted to make sure and live for my kid.
I have literally tried everything. I was on the verge of getting gastric bypass surgery, and I saw the Golo commercial, and it was the last thing I tried because it worked.
Join over 2 million people who found a better way to lose weight with Golo. Your healthier and happier life begins at Golo.com. That's Golo.com. Again, Golo.com.
We made this.
Welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. This is our special Fight the Future Minute podcast. I am your host, Marlene Stemme. You're listening to our coverage of Minute 92 of the X-Files, Fight the Future. This minute begins at 91 minutes with Mulder wiping the top layer of ice away from a cryopod, revealing the face of an abductee, and ends at 91 minutes and 59 seconds with Mulder looking down a chasm streaming with icy mist at the end of one of the base's corridors and then turning back. To discuss this minute, I'm joined by XCast patron Annie Flowers. Hey Annie, welcome to Fight the Future Minute.
Hello, it is so good to be back.
It is good to be talking with you again, especially since we are going to be picking up as Mulder has reached out to touch one of the pods in the corridor, in the alien corridor, wiped away some of the ice, and revealed a face that has this plastic tube going into its mouth.
Creepy stuff.
Left him there at the end of the last minute. Seeing this, perhaps imagining what's happening to Scully, whom he has not found yet. Mulder wipes more ice off the container, and then he's seeing more of this person's body, which has an alien head inside it. So it's at some advanced level of gestation of this alien.
Definitely gets creepier.
Yes, for sure. So he sees this alien. That's the last thing that we, the viewers, see. And the scene cuts to a snowplow that's arriving at the base camp and I believe approaching Mulder's snowcat. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I have as well.
Okay. So, approaching Mulder's snowcat. And then we see a close-up of the cigarette smoking man inhaling pensively. And you see the cigarette smoke characteristically wafting around his face. And he's just sort of sitting there thinking.
I have a lot of thoughts about this. Part of me wonders why he drove all the way to Mulder's snowcat. Why does he care? He clearly knows Mulder's there. Is he there to give Mulder more fuel so he can get back home? Does Mulder have his own fuel on the snowcat to get back home? Is CSM there to sabotage something? Yeah, so we don't really know what his intent is as he's staring at Mulder's snowcat and why he would even drive all the way up to it. So my thinking is he knows Mulder's... My theory is, my headcanon here is that he knows Mulder's shit out of luck, doesn't have a way to get back home, and he is going to help him in whatever way he can, I guess, giving him fuel to get to wherever he needs to go, charter a helicopter or an airplane out of here.
That is so interesting because I don't think I've never thought of that interpretation. I don't think I've ever heard that either. And it makes sense in a cigarette smoking man way, though, and his sort of uncommon motivations or unknown motivations. Because I just thought, it was like, you see him sitting there and he has this look on his face, and it just reminds me of the look at the end of Anasazi, when he says burn it at the end of Anasazi.
The boxcar.
And he has that sort of same look on his face. So I think that that's just always what I considered is that the cigarette smoking man has some other plan going on in his head, that I didn't think about like what's going on in the real world, that he could be providing fuel for Mulder or a way out.
I could be totally wrong. He does have a general look of annoyance on his face. I'm just trying to give a reason for why he would even come all the way out there from his base. So I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe that wasn't the intent of it at all.
No, but I think that's no, but that's good. And it's not something, again, like I think that I get really interested in like what's going on underneath and what is Mulder doing and the rescue sequence and so forth, that all the mechanics of what's happening with the men on the base, including like the cigarette smoking man in the snow. I'm like, oh, well, like that's just the logistics of what's happening. And it's just a bunch of people that are, on set and they're taking direction in order to fulfill this other scene that's happening. But I never really thought of it from that character perspective. So I think that's really great.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I try.
Yes. Yeah. Very well done. So we cut from that very interesting viewpoint of cigarette smoking man. He's looking out at the snowplow, actually. And that goes to Mulder walking through another corridor, and he's shining his flashlight through the other corridor and kind of like walking to see like this a little bit more of the scope of what's going on here.
Right. We get the sense that it's a lot bigger than just the single corridor. I actually have some information on that from the Making a Fight the Future book. So what I have here is that it took 60 days to build the set of the huge tubular structures leading down to corridors lined with cryopods. So that's not only an extensive expanse that Mulder is walking through, but that must be huge, a huge set for them to have built, for it to have taken 60 days. That sounds really big.
It sounds really big, and that sounds like a substantial portion of their production time too. I mean, I know that's one, like one construction crew or like the people that are doing that while everybody else is doing something else or whatever, but that's a hefty chunk of time to be working on it.
Absolutely. I also have one more thing where it says, all but the tightest shots of the spaceship interior would require computer-generated imagery. Every time the camera panned up or off the set, a CG shot was going to be required to complete the image. And that gives us the sense that as big as the set was, they wanted it to have a much bigger, not scope, but they just wanted it to be massive. So I think we're going to see that in just another few seconds here, how big it can actually get.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think it'd be hard on any kind of stage to have like such a sense of presence. I mean, I'm sure they can construct, the parts where David Duchovny is going to run down a corridor or something like that, where there's actually the physical action, but just giving that sense of a scope is, would be difficult to really build that out into a movie set, because it was something they were doing like as a feature film with that type of screen for the first time.
Right.
Yeah. So at this point, Mulder is looking down. He goes down the corridor, shining his flashlight, and he looks down this huge chasm, I said, of indeterminate construction, because I still can't exactly see what it is. And I don't know if we're meant to understand what it is, but it has like a lot of detail. It's just this kind of like fall away beneath him. And then there's, again, this icy mist that is streaming down the sides and flowing behind him.
I thought that there's more green hanging things. And I thought those were hanging cryopods. I don't know if that's correct. It's like you said, it's a little difficult to tell what it is, but that's what I took it as. That's what I have down in my notes.
So in the corridor part, you mean? Or when he gets to the...
when he's standing at the chasm, he's looking out over, and there's just something hanging there. I know this is not the same, but in Monsters Incorporated, when they have all those doors at the very end, I don't know if you've seen it, and they have all those doors and they can string them in. Okay, well, never mind.
No, it's okay.
They have these doors and you can string them in, and so maybe I don't know if they have the same kind of setup. I'm totally speculating here, where these cryopods then need to be like, they need to like come up to where Mulder is, maybe.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Like a conveyor kind of thing?
Yes,
maybe?
yes, kind of like that.
Okay.
And you should see Monsters Incorporated. It's a fantastic movie.
Okay. I'm going to make a note.
Okay.
Monsters Incorporated. I think that's interesting because it almost looked like they were arm-like structures, like in the sort of far distance. And I couldn't tell what they were, but the green color does seem like it goes with the cryopods, so that's very well what it could be.
Now I need to go back and look at it again.
I know.
I'm not sure.
I know. So he sees all of this. So again, like the scope of the ship. And the thing is, like, if that's the case too, I always find that shot very beautiful, but then it's also very disturbing at the same time to think the scope of the abductions has gone that far and these people are just sort of in this suspended state.
Right.
It's not really suspended animation because there's something growing in them from what Mulder saw from the alien head, but they're in this kind of like just this suspended world, that he's seeing. And I mentioned that it was a beautifully lit combination of green and blue. Did we already talk about we talked about the green and the blue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, he's looking over this chasm that's lit in green and blue and sees a little bit more of the scope of this operation. And then he turns back toward the corridor.
I just imagine that it must be so disheartening to walk right up to that chasm, not having found Scully yet in this small corridor. Well, this corridor that he's been in, I don't know how big it actually is, and see how much bigger the space he's in actually is. It must be so difficult to realize that he's going to have a big search ahead of him. It's almost overwhelming.
Yeah. I think it really is, because it's like he goes from thinking he's found something, he sees the corridor and then he finds another corridor. And so he knows there are multiple places, like there's not going to be a simple search. And then he sees like it's not just additive. It's almost like it's just multiplicative. Like all of the space is open. He doesn't know where she is.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine what's going through his head at that during that moment, but he goes on. He's ready to find her.
Yeah. And he does he stops and looks down it. And there's that sort of look of, it's not terror, but like a look of awe, and I don't know what it is, but he has a certain look on his face and he looks out at all of this, and then he just kind of turns and goes back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. I've exhausted my material. Everything else gets into rescuing Scully at this point.
Yeah. All right. That's all for this Fight the Future Minute. We will be back next time for Minute 93. In the meantime, where can our listeners follow you on social media, Annie?
I am on Twitter at Annie A. Flowers, and I'm pretty active on there. And I am sometimes on the Facebook XCast basement group, mostly lurking, sometimes commenting. Okay,
great. And I am on Twitter at Marlene MHS and on Facebook in the XCast basement group, also commenting sometimes and always looking at the interesting conversations. So thanks to our listeners for joining us. Thank you, Annie, for being a part of this. And until next time, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
We've already got 3 versions, I think, haven't we? So
we've got Ace as well.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking just up to this episode. So we've got the Living Rimmer, a hologram Rimmer, and a backup hologram Rimmer. So we've already got 3 Rimmers in the space of 6 episodes.
That's more Rimmers than many people would want.
Yeah, but it's certainly worth diving into, because as you get into, as you say, Ace Rimmer, there's a couple of versions of Ace Rimmer. There's
Evil Future Rimmer.
Without a mouse.
I don't know if I've ever heard Gaelic spoken before, but I don't think this man was speaking Gaelic.
I don't speak Gaelic, so I'm afraid I cannot speak to that. But given how absolutely obsessive Stevenson seems to have been in most other regards, I think he might have been speaking some form of gibberish.
Yeah, we've seen in this show, especially in One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing, some very horrific...
Yes.
And Herbie as well, actually, in The Love Bug. Lots of dialogue that is clearly made up language, supposed to be Chinese. So my bum was clenching a bit when I heard this supposed Gaelic, because I'm pretty sure it's not.
free with this month's issue.
I decided to have a look to see if I could find that interview online anywhere, and I couldn't, but in my searching, the photo from that interview was collected on a website called thestrokesartilluminati.blogspot.com.
The Strokes are a bunch of overrated hacks, then?
No, they're actually Illuminati, apparently, according to this website.
I mean, that explains a lot, right?
They are the secret rulers of the world.
Yeah, I mean, current climate, that seems to be the work of the Strokes.
Yeah. Maybe that's all what was hidden in the album.
It's almost certainly.
New York City cops meant something else.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.